In every neighborhood, there's always one person who believes the rules exist for everyone else but themselves. In this community, that person was Karen, the HOA president. With her clipboard tucked under her arm and a smug expression that rarely left her face, she had become a living nightmare for homeowners. From grass blades being too tall to mailboxes being improperly aligned, Karen's reach extended far beyond reason. Her power came not only from the HOA bylaws, but from something few suspected, a master key she kept hidden, one that opened every door in the community. Most neighbors never questioned her authority. They tolerated her unannounced visits, her constant letters, and her whispered threats of fines. But beneath the surface, resentment simmered. Families whispered about the strange sense of being watched, the feeling that someone had stepped just a little too far onto their property. One particular household had recently caught Karen's attention. The Johnson family had moved into the neighborhood only a year ago, but they already found themselves on Karen's radar. A few late trash bins, a misplaced lawn ornament, and Karen had decided their home was in desperate need of inspection. She believed her key gave her the right, and she had no intention of waiting for permission. What she didn't know was that someone was home that afternoon. The Johnsons' teenage son, Ethan, had decided to skip soccer practice and stay in. His decision would turn an ordinary day into the spark of a neighborhood scandal that no one would ever forget. Karen had perfected her routine over the years. She walked briskly up the driveway, scanning the lawn as though every pebble and blade of grass was evidence for her case. Her purse clinked faintly with the weight of keys, dozens of them, organized, labeled and rarely questioned. Among them was the one that gave her the most satisfaction, the master key. To her, it was a symbol of control, a reminder that every home in the neighborhood was, in some way, under her authority. As she reached the Johnsons' front porch, she didn't even hesitate. She glanced around, ensuring no one was watching, and then slid the key into the lock. The quiet click of the door unlatching gave her a surge of power she'd grown addicted to. She stepped inside, confident that the house was empty, ready to take notes and gather evidence of non-compliance. But what Karen didn't know was that Ethan had heard the sound. Sitting in the living room with his headphones resting around his neck, he froze. His parents were at work, his little sister at a friend's house. No one was supposed to come in. The creeping realization hit him. Someone was breaking in. Karen moved slowly down the hallway, her eyes scanning picture frames and furniture, as though she had the right to judge them. She was smug, deliberate, unaware that each step brought her closer to a confrontation she could never have prepared for. Ethan's heart pounded as the sound of footsteps moved deeper into the house. At first, he thought it might be his imagination, but the creak of the hallway floor confirmed it. Someone was definitely inside. The realization filled him with a mix of fear and adrenaline. He quickly turned off the television, silencing the room, and slipped into the shadows, his mind racing. Whoever had entered hadn't knocked, hadn't called out. That meant this wasn't a friend, and it certainly wasn't family. From the corner of the living room, Ethan could see a figure moving. Karen, clipboard in hand, adjusted her glasses and scanned the furniture as though she were walking through a showroom. She had no idea she wasn't alone. To Ethan, it was insulting. This wasn't just a house, it was his family's home, their private space, and she had invaded it without a second thought. He decided he wouldn't sit back quietly. He wasn't reckless, but he wasn't going to let someone stroll through his house as though it were part of their jurisdiction. He grabbed his phone, quickly snapping a picture for proof, and then slipped silently behind her. Each step he took was deliberate, fueled by the anger of someone who knew this crossed every possible line. Karen paused at a bookshelf, scribbling something in her notes. She didn't sense the teenager now only a few feet away, ready to make his presence known in a way she could never ignore. Karen froze when she finally realized she was not alone. Ethan's sudden presence behind her shattered the illusion of control she carried so effortlessly. Startled, she spun around, her clipboard nearly slipping from her grasp. For the first time in years, the HOA president felt the uncomfortable sting of being caught red-handed. She tried to compose herself, straightening her shoulders, but the evidence was undeniable. She was inside a private home, uninvited, with no justification that would hold up beyond her own self-declared authority. Ethan's expression wasn't one of fear, but of determination. The teenager stood his ground, silently holding up his phone, the camera still recording every second. The shift of power was instant. The smug confidence Karen had walked in with drained away, replaced with a nervous rigidity. She attempted to wave it off, as if this intrusion were routine, but Ethan didn't budge. His stance was calm but firm, his message clear without a single word spoken. She was caught, and this time there was no way to twist the narrative. For the first time, Karen realized her usual tactics, threats of fines, warnings of rule violations, wouldn't work here. This wasn't a neighbor she could intimidate. This was someone who had undeniable proof of her crossing the line. Ethan didn't chase her, didn't yell. Instead, he let the silence build, the weight of the moment pressing harder with each second. Karen's bravado began to crack, and in that fracture, the seeds of her downfall quietly took root. News in a quiet neighborhood moves faster than anyone expects, especially when it involves the one person who made herself impossible to ignore. Ethan's recording, discreetly shared with a few close friends, spread like a spark on dry grass. Within hours, nearly every homeowner had seen the footage of Karen letting herself into the Johnsons' home with her master key, wandering freely as though she owned the place. The image of her startled face when confronted was burned into the minds of neighbors who had long suspected her of crossing boundaries but never had proof. Whispers turned into conversations. Conversations turned into outrage. People recalled missing packages, unlocked doors, and unexplained visits that suddenly made sense. The master key was no longer a rumor. It was fact. And with proof circulating on phones and laptops, Karen's carefully constructed authority began to crumble. For years, she had ruled through intimidation and manipulation. But now, the same neighbors she had fined for lawn ornaments and threatened over fence colors were united against her. The evidence was undeniable, and worse for her, it was public. Karen tried to dismiss it as a misunderstanding, but the footage was too clear. The smug leader of the HOA now looked like an intruder, exposed and vulnerable. The neighborhood wasn't just angry, they were ready for change. And while Karen scrambled to regain control, plans were quietly forming behind closed doors. This time, the power would no longer be hers to wield. The HOA meeting that followed was unlike any the neighborhood had ever seen. Normally, Karen would preside with her usual superiority, handing out citations and warnings as if they were her personal currency. But this time, the room was different. The seats were full, the air thick with tension, and every pair of eyes was fixed on her. Ethan's video had stripped away the facade of authority, leaving Karen with nothing but excuses. When the evidence was formally presented, there was no denying it. The sight of her entering the Johnsons' home without permission, clipboard in hand, was undeniable proof of her abuse of power. Homeowners who had once been silent out of fear now spoke with confidence. They listed grievances, shared suspicions, and demanded accountability. The woman who had controlled the neighborhood for years found herself cornered. Her own rules now turned against her. The vote was swift. In a matter of minutes, Karen was removed from her position as HOA president. The master key was confiscated, her access revoked, and her influence dismantled piece by piece. What she thought was her untouchable reign had collapsed overnight. For the Johnsons, and especially for Ethan, the victory was personal. His quick thinking had not only protected his home, but also liberated an entire community from years of intimidation. The neighborhood, once suffocated under Karen's control, finally breathed freely again. And as word spread beyond their cul-de-sac, Karen's downfall became the story everyone whispered about, a cautionary tale of power, arrogance, and the unexpected courage of one teenager.